So we're back with Tony, and so you were just telling us about the 6 years you spent, first 6 years on Ceres, where you were on this kind of older freighter type submarine-looking spacecraft, and how you were kind of like fulfilling these maintenance duties, and then being after you completed those duties, you would be allowed to go back to your room, and then so what happened towards the end of that assignment?
Well, we started getting busier and busier to fix the thing. It was getting toward the end of its service life, and we were starting to do repairs all the time. There were starting to be things wrong with it down there, and like I said, I knew how to fix the systems. I was doing pipes and pneumatics and refilling things with oil and stuff like that. But I didn't know what they were doing. I didn't know what was in the pipe. I didn't know. There were radioactive signs where we knew that what was in the pipe was a radioactive material, and we had to behave a certain way around it. We couldn't just cut it open. We had to have people sign off before we worked on it. But it was starting to get bad, and there were things that we couldn't fix at all. There were valves that we just couldn't fix them, and it was starting to get towards the end of its life. Anything that I knew about what we did was only rumor that I heard from the other guys, from other people that talked, essentially other slaves. So really, I was in the dark where we went and what we were doing, if we were carrying anything. I had no idea. I was in a small area. I think the entire size of the area that I worked on in that ship would be like, 10,000 square feet of hallways and rooms that I would work in on the bottom part. Toward the end, we were on a mission. We had an intercom that would tell us. There was an intercom in our area where we worked, and there were intercoms in other areas, not everywhere. And they would tell us that hey, we need to fix this right now. Don't skip the one you're on right now. Quit and go and fix the other one. We need it immediately. There was a bigger valve that kept going but wrong, and I guess it was an essential system. And we were told that we had priority. You've got to fix this one right now, and we couldn't. There were none of the auto cutters big enough to go around the pipe. It was a huge pipe. It was 25, 30 inches in diameter, and I guess it was like a purge. It was a purge for one of the tanks, and it was radioactive water. It was a radioactive system. One of the guys that I worked with figured out how to tack 2 or 3 of the auto. I wasn't there when he did it, but he figured out a way to wire 2 or 3 of the auto cutters together so that it would fit around the pipe and cut it. And what he did was there was a valve up inside it, 5 feet or so, that wouldn't close all the way, and we were purging radioactive water out of it. What he did was he crawled up in the pipe. He said, "Come here, I'm going to need you to pull me out." We figured it out. We're all standing around. We were happy because we were told to fix this for months and we couldn't, and we finally figured out a way to get in at this valve. It was like it was a problem to solve. So we were really happy about it. And so he crawled up in there and he took a wrench with him, like your standard like a wrench, and he banged on the valve and it didn't work, and he figured out, I think first he took something different and he banged on it. You could get your hand on and bang on it, and he couldn't get it, and then he finally pried it, and the valve closed, and we heard on the intercom, "Great job, guys, thank you, we could see it up here, you did it." And it was once, and then that went on. We left it open. It was somebody like an engineer came down and said, "Well, we're gonna have to fix this, you're gonna have to close this eventually." We said, "Well, we could barely cut it off. We destroyed one of our auto welders to cut it off. We're not gonna be able to weld it back together. You know what I mean? You're gonna have to have somebody else come in and service it." And they said, "Okay." He said, "Well, this ship is almost done with its service life anyway. We've only got a few more months. We're gonna get a new one." And we were out somewhere on a mission, and we had to do that valve. Somebody had to crawl up there and bang on that valve at first once a week, and then a couple times a week, and it got progressively worse because it was open and there were things getting up in there. You know what I mean? It was because it was exposed to air. I don't know, but it was getting worse. It was progressively worse. And then something happened to one of the guys I work with. I had a partner, and we got it down to where it was me and him, and I was always the one that pulled him out. He wanted to be the one to go up there, and I guess to get recognized for being the guy that got it working again. So I was always the one that pulled him out, and I had never done it. and he was sick one day, or something happened. He didn't come to work. He wasn't there that day. And the other guy that would have came was called to another vital system that was broken far away, like on the far end of our service area. So I was all by myself, and then the intercom comes on and says, we need that valve now. Fix it. And so I went back on and said, there's nobody here. It's just me. I'm not going to be able to fix it. And a few minutes later, 10 minutes later, we need that valve. You're going to have to figure something out. We need you to fix it right now. And I said, it's the same situation. You're going to have to send me some help. Send me somebody down here to help, is what I said, And then finally, I could tell the person's voice was he was in panic. He was panicking. And he said, we need that valve right now, he was totally panicked. Like, get the valve going now. So I thought, man, we also use the term anti-telephone a lot. There was jokes about it. But we had anti-telephone technology to where if the mission was a failure, they could phone back in time and just cancel the mission before we left. That was my understanding. But that was this is hearsay that I was told from other slave guys like me.
Okay, so let's just kind of clarify that. So this older submarine type spacecraft, even though it had, piping and valves, that kind of older style technology familiar to those who look at submarines, it had this anti-telephone technology that it could actually portal back in time to the time before it actually left the mission.
Right. Most of the time we got back, it was a short day. We would be gone 8 hours. I would be back within a half hour, and I had the rest of the day to go. We had longer periods of time that we were off work. Mm-hmm. And we would go, sometimes they'd be long days, 12, 16 hours, but I would come back. You actually travel back in time close to the time you left when you get back. So that's what I'm saying. We always said, that was the joke, like, you suck at your job so bad, we're going to anti-telephone and cancel this mission.
Okay, so that tells us then that these dark fleet vessels, even the kind of merchant ships, the freighters, have this kind of these temporal drives.
Yep. Well, at the time, that's what I knew about it. We used the word. So when the panic guy came over the loudspeaker, I thought, well, they're just going to anti-telephone this anyway. Obviously, this is a scrub, so I don't even know why I still remember it. And so I thought, I'll just crawl in there and do it myself. Somebody will come and pull me out. And I did. So I grabbed the wrench he used, and we had it in the same spot, grabbed it, and I crawled up there, and it was my right arm. And I banged on it, and I finally pried and got the valve going. But it didn't close all the way. And I was stuck up there, and I remember screaming, help, get me out of here. And then I started getting hot steam on me, bad. And I got my hand very badly burnt and my face very badly burnt. I don't know what the variables of the mission we were on or where we were or what was going on, but I remember being in a lot of pain and passing out. And I couldn't breathe. I was breathing in hot, like a boiling steam. And I thought, I'm going to die, In the back of my mind, I'm thinking, they're going to anti-telephone this, and it'll be fine. I was kind of clinging to that. And they pulled me out. I remember being freezing cold when they pulled me out into the room temperature air, and I was just very badly burnt, and there were officers standing over me. And the captain himself came down, and he looked at me, and he looked like concerned, He looked like he felt guilty, that was the case. So they had a discussion, and he said, no, we're going to fix him up. What he did, they was like, we're going to treat him. He's going to get the full repair. We're going to fix him up. And so I was off to a hospital, and I was completely fixed. Now, I don't remember how that went. I don't remember what they did to me, but I just remember being the day when they let me go, and I went back to my room, that I was fine. And then we had a period of, like a month. It was a couple of months before we had to work again. I didn't have to work. I just stayed in my cell, and we did. We go and you would still shower, and we'd walk around and talk. But because I wasn't one of the miners, the guys, I didn't really have any friends there where I stayed. But our new ship was a huge ship, and I was promoted and trained. I got another round of that training for a completely new job. I remember going into an office area and going for a meeting, and they said, you're going to be promoted, and we already know from your scores you're going to be good for this You're going to be good for this position. You're getting a huge promotion, and you're going to like where you're going. We're not going to burn you up anymore, and what you did was really good. I guess they told me that if I was an actual officer, I would have been medaled for that.
Yeah. You said that on Aries Prime that the grey extraterrestrials trained you to do this maintenance for your next assignment. So now, who trained
They were
you?
people. They were people.
It was people, not
Yep,
greys.
They were humans.
Okay.
Yep. It was humans, my teacher, but it was the same, basically the same system. There were a few changes, and it was a much smaller room. You know, it was a room with only like a dozen stations to teach people, and it was just about cargo stuff and how to use the computer. There was a terminal that I used, and it was just how to use that software. Was all I learned. It was like 3 days of training. It wasn't a lot. The new ship, then I was taken, and they made me. They said I had to be familiar with the outside of the cargo bay, and so they took me to the hangar area, which was just gigantic. And I remember looking down on it, and I never saw the entire thing at once because it was a big ship. But I remember looking down on it. The front of it was kind of sloped like a triangle shape, and then I rode an elevator, a service elevator down. In front of it, there were a few not really like what you would call a window, but places you could see inside of it. And then I rode down in front of it, and then there was a guy on a six-wheeled, like a cart, and he said, "Come on." He came and picked me up, and I drove under it, and he pointed out the bays. He said, "That's going to be your bay," and we went up. "That's going to be your bay," and then he took me around the back, and it. What comes to mind is the pumpkin seed one that Corey Good described, but in my mind, the back end of it came to a taper and was squared off. So it was a pumpkin seed shape that came around, and then the back of it was square. It might have been under it. I never really saw the entire back of it. We drove not quite to the end of it and turned around and drove back.
Mm-hmm. So this is 1997. So this is this new
in there
freighter that
97, 98.
Right,
Yeah.
97, 98. So how big was it? Do you have an
It was
estimate?
huge. It was a long ride. That thing was probably going 20 miles an hour, and it was a minute to the other side, a couple minutes. It was a big thing. Mm-hmm. And the floor where it was at, it wasn't touching the ground. It never touched the ground. Mm-hmm. There was no like landing gear or anything. It just floated there. Mm-hmm.
So this pumpkin seed space freighter, we're talking something like 1,000 feet,
Easy.
10,000 feet.
I don't know about that.
Right. Okay.
It was huge. I just remember going, when is it going to end? Mm-hmm. We got towards the back of it when he started pointing. He said, "Here's your bays," and basically, I was in charge of 2 cargo bays in the back of it. There were 5 main ones, and then they could be opened up into one giant bay or closed. There were, we would close it off. We used to bring things in and then put them up, stack them in order, and then close the wall down over it. And then we had another cargo bay to stack up. So we constantly had a stock of cargo, of things. We had things that we kept in stock that were always on the ship. It was never completely empty. Mm-hmm. So we went back, and it was a few more weeks before we had any missions on there. And again, it was the same thing. I had a counterpart that did the same exact job on the other side of the ship, and we were constantly being rated against each other to see who was more productive. I got to go to the mission briefings in the morning. This time, instead of getting up and going to work, I would get up, and there was an umbilical to the ship in the front of it, and a slave umbilical in the back of it. And I used to get in the morning. I went in the front umbilical, which was bigger. There were women working on it. Everybody was young in their 20s. I went in there with the people. They were dressed in different uniforms. I think the communications people had like a dark navy blue color they wore with boots. It was like a military, like a jump suit. And the command guys were in flat black. There were guys that wore shiny black uniforms. I don't know what they did. I was in a light gray, and the cargo guys were in a dark gray. So because I was in charge of 7 or 8 guys in my 2 bays. They were dark gray guys. I was a light gray guy, and it was a one-piece jumpsuit that I wore. But I used to go up, and I'd go and sit down, and it was a long white table. There'd be 10 officers there and 4 or 6 other guys like me, light gray guys, that were in charge of their stuff. I always sat in the same seat. To the left, there was a place we had coffee. None of the officers drank coffee. They made sure that we did. You almost had to every day. And they drank something. I asked the guy a few times, "So what do you drink in there?" He said, "No, you don't worry about it. It's none of your business." It was a hot drink.
Regarding the officers, the 10 officers, What nationality were they?
They were all blonde
Blonde,
or dark-haired guys. They were German guys. They
all
spoke in
German,
German. Yep.
all German guys.
Most of the meeting was in German, and then they could flick a switch, and we could understand them in English. And whenever they wanted to talk to us, it was just like, how much room is in your bay? What do you got in there? Is it empty? You know, I used to give reports on the weight and the size of the pile of stuff we had. I never knew. In my report, it never told me what was in the boxes. I just had boxes that were numbered or coded, and I said we have 100 of the X box. You know, we got 200 of the B box. You know, it was kind of like that.
And on Ceres itself, like the facility in Ceres where this merchant vessel or the freighter would use as a base, was German the dominant language there as well?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep. The other places, yeah, everybody spoke German. When I left it too. At that point, when I was going to those meetings, I also got a paycheck. They had a little vote, and they said, they're one of us. We might as well give them some money. And so I got something like $20 a week, you know, and which I was thrilled.
Right. Do you know when the Ceres base was actually created by the Germans? Do you have any?
No, it was
knowledge
like
of
a
that?
rumor thing, but they said that my impression was that they found it. They found it there, and they had built on. So they found the initial base, which was huge, the hangar area, the hangar base, and that ship that was huge that we were in. I mean, you could fit 20 or 30 of them in there. It was an absolutely huge chasm, and there were other big chasms. There were some that were stepped up, you know, that went like that in the roof, that were huge, that were 200, 300 feet tall, and they were huge chasms. And what they had done is built, like, you know, they built buildings inside of them, along the bottom of them, and so they were like, you could get something to eat. There was places to get clothes, and you know, there were shops. And there were other places that they had directly mined. The guys had mined that were smaller, that looked more like it ended up looking like a shopping mall. You could come off the train and step out into a shopping mall. You could come off the train and step out into something still under construction with just, you know, conduit and garbage laying around. They were building aggressively the whole time. There were always, you would go to the train, and there was a map. There was two rings around the inside of the planet that were trains. And then sometimes they would break off and a train would go to a different area. And they would add on. You'd go there and be like, oh, wow, there's a new train route. You know, they were building. And then there were also huge elevator things that were maybe the size of this deck, you know, 20 by 20 elevators. And I remember riding one time for like 20 minutes and getting on another one for 20 minutes. So that's how far vertically they went down. They had places that they went down vertically.
Right, I see.
And they had found places that were there already, that they had converted into places for people to live. I went and visited. I had a girlfriend, and she was in communications on our ship, and she had me come over, you know, and she had her own place, and it was converted from what they had found. It was a room that was converted from what they found, and when you got there, it was a stone door that was a triangle shape, and you would think to it, hey, I'm here, and she could hear it. And she would go, okay, come on in. And the door would move open. It would pivot open like that. And it was an apartment. They built an apartment in there. And but she was way down low. Like, you had to take an elevator very far. It was a 40-minute elevator ride to go to her where she was after the train ride. So it took me a long time to get there. But everybody else mostly had human-looking places that they lived in, apartments. Imagine a long hallway with doors on the right, you know, doors on the right and left, and they were apartments. That's where most of the other people that lived. You know, I was able to visit one other person from the ship, you know, and the whole time there.
Okay, well, before we move on to some of the missions that you performed on this new ship, anything else you want to say about your time on the Ceres base facility?
There were aliens. Most of the shops were ran by tall human. They look just like us, same kind of head. The first time I went out and had money, I got lost, and I was afraid that I was not going to make it back in time and be killed. That was your threat. You don't get here in time for work, we're going to shoot you. And so I was afraid I was not going to make it back in time. I was totally lost. I took a train, and I took one that connected somewhere differently, and I didn't pay attention to where I was going. I was lost, completely lost. And everywhere, the area where I was all civilian people. There were women with people and pushing kids in strollers, you know. It was a civilian people. They were dressed very well. I remember a girl in a stroller, and she had a black dress on with silver, like an inch of silver metal on the inseam of it. It was beautiful. You know, like they had really good fashion. You know, the people that were free there, I remember admiring that, you know, I couldn't believe that how lucky they were, you know, to live like that. But I got lost, and I saw two guys in a military uniform, but they were aliens. One guy was like, I want to say he looked like a cat, but it wasn't the case. He had coarse orange hair. He was shorter and stocky, and he was ugly looking. You know, he's ugly. I really don't know how to describe him other than that. He had hair. And the other guy was smaller, and he was more of a fish. He had like a fish eyes and a snout. You know what I mean? And they were together, and because they were in uniform, I thought that, you know, that they were in the army like I was, or whatever I was in, you know, the fleet. I thought they were part of the fleet. So I asked them, I'm lost, can you guys help me out? And they said, yeah. I had to wear a collar, a slave collar. There was a correction collar, and you would get electrified if you were disciplined. And they saw my collar, and he said, what are you doing talking to us? Don't even talk to us. How are you even out here? You don't even have money. And they were, you know, what are you doing here? They immediately, you know, what makes you think we're going to help you? And it was a telepathic communication. And I said, I'm lost. Can you just tell me how to get back to the hangar area? And they said, you can't even get to the hangar area. Guys like you don't even have money. I said, I got money. And as soon as I showed them my money, the one punched me, and they basically beat me up and took my money. I got mugged. And I remember very clearly sitting against the wall, looking down, watching my nose bleed. And a girl came up to me. She said, honey, are you okay? What's going on? And she spoke English. And she took me in, and it was you know, might sound fantastic, but it was a strip club. She was a sex worker in a strip club. And she took me in and sat me down. And the owner there was one of these 8-foot tall humans. And he made it clear to her. She said, look, he's never going to speak to you. Don't ever address him. Don't go near him. He said, if that's the case, you're going to have to leave. And he said he never wants to hear a thought from you. You know, because I was a slave. You know, I was basically to them a mentally damaged person. So he kept me there, and I said, I'm lost. They're going to kill me. I don't have much time to get back, and I know I'm going to get disciplined. I'm going to get hurt really badly. I'm going to get killed. I was breaking down into tears. And so she went back, and he was like, tell him to leave. Get out of here. And I said, can you just tell me where I go? Can you guys just please help me to where I'm at? And he didn't know. He said they tried to have me describe the place, and apparently there are other hangars that I was unaware of. They said that could be any hangar here. You know, it could be any of these. So they called the police, and, you know, like your German Gestapo, like your SS guys, and they showed up 20 minutes later maybe. And as soon as they saw an insignia I had on me, you know, like a couple bars or something on me, they said, oh, he's going there, okay. And they told him where I was going. And then they stayed. They had a good time. They joked with the girls, and then they left. And the owner, loaned me a couple bucks to take a train. And he said, "I know you're not going to pay me back, but just go on, get out of here, so you don't get killed." And I went back, but I paid him back the next week. And apparently during that week, somebody from my ship, I told the guys, I went to the mission briefing the next morning with 2 black eyes. You know, I was beat up, and they said, we shouldn't even give him money. Look what happened to him. You shouldn't even give him any money. He's gonna, you know, this is gonna get worse. He's gonna get killed out there like that. But they did. They did. And I said, well, I want to go pay the guy back. And apparently one of those guys went to that place and told him that I would, you know, that guy earned his freedom to do for what I did when I was injured on that ship. And he said that I could stay. I was free to come there anytime I want. And there was a table where I guess a girl was assaulted that he couldn't see. He was a tall guy, and he was in the back corner of the room, but he couldn't see a table in the right corner. I guess a girl got assaulted and either raped or something bad happened that he couldn't see. So he had me sit in that table whenever I came there as a placeholder, and he said, when the place fills up, you've got to leave, but you sit in this table only. So that way nobody else would sit there. He knew that I wasn't any harm, and I got to know people there. I went there quite a bit for about a year and a half. And in all my spare time, I budgeted my money so I could get there and back, and I just drank water. I wasn't a customer, and I went there. So that was a brothel, and there were aliens. They were having sex. There were other races came there, and they had other things. And the girls would talk to me. I was just as they were slaves. I was a slave, and they would tell me about things that they did, things that happened, and frankly, it's there's a lot of shocking things. You know, there were girls that went crazy because they had telepathic connections with aliens that left, and they went crazy afterward from the encounter. And there were aliens that preferred to have sex in front of people. They couldn't do it alone. They had to be in a group, so it was allowed in the room there. But most of the time, it was just basically like a strip club. It was fancy. In the beginning, they remodeled it. This is of note. They had remodeled it, and right when you came in the front door, there was a glass case that was kind of rounded, and inside of it was a zero gravity environment, and it would shoot water in, and there'd be bubbles of water, and it would shoot flames in, and then the gravity would turn on and it would splash out. But the flames, I used to sit and watch them. They would be a bubble of flame, and then it would pop, and it would kind of like a balloon, and it would shoot the flames in the zero G, and it shot like a butane, like a ball of fire. So that was right. That was like the display when you first walked in, and everything else had like cool like neon lights and stuff.
So, so let's
moving on.
Yeah, so let's come back and have you tell us something about the missions that you were part of when you were on this pumpkin seed.
We went far.
new
We went very far.